lie about the curse on Ham. You understand how Ham was cursed in the Bible, but when we look at the Bible, we see a greatness of black people, and that's inspired them to write Antiquity to the Black Race, which the Nation of Islam under the Honorable Elijah Muhammad had published and had circulated and put out. A couple of the editions had the proof that we need to bring forth the truth, and this particular truth on this subject matter. And just to continue or sum up on Nimrod, at least at this point right here again, because Nimrod, by white people and white supremacy, Nimrod, that Ethiopian, is often made the boogeyman of Christianity and Judaism. Nimrod, the boogeyman. We can call this, and should call this, Nimrod, the boogeyman. And most of the resources or sources that claim that Nimrod was this boogeyman basically are extra biblical sources, are basically Jewish tales and very questionable sources that claim this is no biblical sources. This is the very interesting thing, that Nimrod has been demonized. A black man, an obvious great black man, has been demonized by white racist Jews, so-called, and Christians, so-called, and their proof is not archaeology, it's not evidence. Their proof is not any Bible truth. Their proof is basically a bunch of extra biblical sources, such as the Talmud. Basically, are extra biblical sources, are basically Jewish tales, the Babylonian, Assyrian Talmud, and we already have proven and established that the Assyrians were enemies of God's people. This is the interesting thing, the verse that we spoke about from Isaiah 52:4. If you listen to some of the older reggae music, some of the what we call the pure reggae music, the real King's music, a lot of the older artists often spoke about the Israelites and the Assyrian persecuting the Israelites, and the Assyrian persecuted them there. I forget exactly which particular song, but one of my musical brethren and buddies will ask him, Brother Kush, will ask him which particular song has a verse, or which songs, and maybe we'll get the collection of these songs and actually play them for you so that you'll be able to hear the verse in these various different reggae songs that spoke on the theme of the Assyrians persecuting God's people like in Egypt, and that's derived from an accurate interpretation of Isaiah 52:4. But Nimrod, the Cushite, and Cush begat Nimrod, and he began to be a mighty one in the earth. Genesis 10:8. Now here's the in-bed racism of white supremacy and white folks and the so-called Jews and Christians, because they all say that Nimrod was a boogeyman. He's a bad guy. He defied God, and we can't find that anywhere in the text. Nowhere in the text it says that Nimrod defied God or Nimrod was against God. Why is Nimrod a bad guy? Because who's his father? Cush. And who's Cush? Ethiopia. And Ethiopia basically means Negro and black, basically. So the Negro and the black begat Nimrod. And this Negro black, son of a Negro black, he began to be a mighty one in the earth. You know, that was a bad nigger. He was a badass nigger. That's what they're saying of Nimrod. He was a badass nigger. Look, go on Google, YouTube's Nimrod, and see all the garbage that you read out there. Maybe out of 1,000 pieces of garbage, you might find somebody who honestly will express the truth. But in the next verse of Genesis, it says, and he was a mighty hunter before the Lord. The lying so-called Jews who claim to be Jews by the synagogue of Satan in their counterfeit Judaism will lie against this mighty Ethiopian and say that, and even lie against God's word. They'll say that, you see where it says before in Genesis chapter 10 and 9, that before the Lord means that he did this before the Lord like sing praises before the Lord, or like Abraham walked before the Lord. It doesn't mean before the Lord in that positive sense. The lion-ass Jew would say that that means he was against the Lord. It doesn't mean before in the positive sense. It means against the Lord. And you know what I did? I went to my Masoretic Torah, Tanakh, you understand, and the other Hebrew scriptures that we have access to, and we started to do a study. In fact, you could do a study on the Blue Letter Bible or any of these online Bibles, and just look for the same context: before the Lord, before the Lord, before the Lord, before the Lord, before the Lord. And nowhere is before the Lord in a negative sense. But the lion-ass Jew in his footnotes, the counterfeit Jew, the synagogue of Satan, lies against this mighty black man. Why is that? Why? There's the question. Why? Why about the curse on Ham? You understand how Ham was cursed in the Bible? But when we look at the Bible, we see the greatness of black people, and that's inspired him to write Antiquity to the Black Race, which the Nation of Islam under the Honorable Elijah Muhammad had published and had circulated and put out a couple of the editions that the proof that we need to bring forth the truth, and this particular truth on this subject matter. And just to continue on, sum up on Nimrod,